My name is Vivian, I am 30 years old and I live in the city. My phone buzzed at 3:47 p.m. on a random Tuesday. I looked down at the screen and saw a name I hadn't seen in 8 months. It was my father. The message was short. Family celebration tonight. Important news about the expansion, don't be late. I stared at the words. For the last 8 months my phone had been completely silent. There were no birthday calls. No texts asking how I was doing. No invitations to holidays. To my family, I didn't exist. But this morning, everything changed. At 8 o'clock a.m., Forbes released their new issue. My face was right there in the business section. Next to my picture was a headline about my tech company and one very specific number, a $92 million valuation. It wasn't a coincidence. They didn't suddenly miss me. They didn't suddenly remember they had a daughter named Vivian. They saw the article. They saw the money. I used to cry when they ignored me. I used to beg for just a little bit of their attention. But staring at that text message, I didn't feel sad. I felt cold. They think they are inviting their quiet, desperate daughter to dinner, but they are wrong. They are inviting a bank account. And they have no idea that this bank is about to close. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Vivian. I am 30 years old. To understand why I felt cold when I read my father's text message, you have to understand the night of the rain. You have to understand the night I finally thought I had made it. It was 2 years ago. It was the night of my Series B funding announcement. In the startup world, this is a massive milestone. It means serious investors believe in you. It means you aren't just a dreamer anymore, you are a real player. I had secured $20 million in funding. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. I had worked 18-hour days for months. I had eaten cheap noodles and slept on an office floor. I had pitched to room after room of men who looked at me like I was a little girl lost in a library. But I did it. I won. I wanted to celebrate. But I didn't want a party with strangers. I wanted the people who were supposed to love me. I booked a private room at Le Jardin, the most expensive restaurant in the city. It was the kind of place my parents loved. It had white tablecloths, crystal glasses, and waiters who wore tuxedos. I ordered the best wine. I ordered the seafood tower my mother likes. I ordered the steak my father always talks about. I sat there at 7 o'clock p.m. I was wearing a new dress. It was blue. I remember the color because I spent an hour choosing it. I wanted to look successful. I wanted them to look at me and say, "Good job, Vivian. We are proud of you." At 7:15 p.m. the room was empty. I checked my phone. No texts. I told the waiter, "They are just running a little late. Traffic is bad." The waiter nodded. He was kind. He poured me a glass of water. At 7:45 p.m. I texted my mother. "Hey Mom, everything okay? I'm at the restaurant." She didn't reply immediately. I looked around the empty room. There were 6 chairs, one for me, one for Mom, one for Dad, one for my older brother, Jason, one for my younger brother, Tyler, and one for Uncle Jeffrey, who always tagged along if there was free food. 5 empty chairs. They looked like teeth in a mouth that was laughing at me. At 8 o'clock p.m. my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jason. "Can't make it, Vive. Something came up with the kids. Have a drink for me." I knew Jason didn't have the kids that night. It was his ex-wife's weekend. He was lying. But I didn't say anything. I just typed back, "Okay, next time." 10 minutes later, Mom finally replied. "Oh honey, I have such a terrible migraine. I can't move. I'm so sorry. Take pictures of the food." I stared at the screen. My chest felt tight. I opened Instagram. I shouldn't have done it, but I did. I clicked on my cousin's story. There was a video posted 5 minutes ago. It showed a party. There was loud music. And there, in the background, was my mother. She was holding a martini glass. She was laughing. She didn't look like she had a migraine. She looked perfectly fine. She was at Tyler's influencer launch party. Tyler, my younger brother, the golden child. He had decided last week that he was going to be a lifestyle influencer. He had no job. He had no plan. But he had a party. And my parents chose his party over my $20 million achievement. My father didn't even text. He just didn't show up. I sat in that beautiful, expensive room for another hour. The waiter came back. He looked uncomfortable. "Would you like to order dinner, ma'am?" he asked softly. I looked at the 5 empty chairs. I looked at the seafood tower that was melting. "No," I said. My voice sounded small. "Just the check, please." I paid the bill. It was $400 for food nobody ate. I walked out into the rain. I stood on the sidewalk and let the water ruin my hair. I let it ruin the blue dress. I cried, but I didn't make a sound. I just let the tears mix with the rain so nobody could tell the difference. That wasn't the first time. It was just the time that broke me. The pattern had been there my whole life. It was written in every birthday and every school event. When I was 10, I won the state science fair. I built a working model of a water filtration system. I was so proud. The awards ceremony was on a Saturday. "We can't go, Vivian," my dad had said, not even looking up from his newspaper. "Tyler has his soccer game." "But Tyler plays soccer every weekend," I said. "This is the state finals." "Don't be selfish," my mother snapped. "Your brother needs our support. He's the team captain." They went to the soccer game. Tyler's team lost. Tyler cried, and they bought him ice cream to make him feel better. I stood on the stage alone to accept my medal. The principal looked into the crowd for my parents. I saw him looking. I saw the pity in his eyes when he realized no one was there for me. I smiled, but my face hurt. I took the medal and put it in my pocket. I never showed it to them. They never asked. When I graduated college, they left early because Uncle Jeffrey was bored. When I started my first company, I asked my dad for a small loan. Just $5,000 to buy a server. "Vivian," he sighed like I was asking for the moon. "Business is risky. You're a girl. You should find a nice husband. I can't throw money away on a hobby." 2 weeks later, he bought Jason a new truck worth $40,000. Jason crashed it a month later. Dad just laughed and said, "Boys will be boys." They didn't hate me. Hate would have been easier. If they hated me, it would mean I mattered enough to cause an emotion. No, they just didn't care. I was the furniture. I was the background noise. I was safe Vivian. The one who didn't cause trouble. The one who didn't need anything. They punished me for being independent. Because I didn't need their help, they gave me no love. Because Tyler and Jason were disasters who needed constant bailing out, they got all the attention. So when I saw that text message today, 8 months after the silent treatment began, I didn't feel hope. I remembered the rain. I remembered the empty chairs at Le Jardin. I remembered the science fair. I remembered the check for the truck. I realized that they weren't calling because they missed their daughter. They were calling because the hobby they laughed at was now worth $92 million. They were calling because they were hungry, and they thought I was the meal. I stood in front of my mirror in my apartment. I had to choose what to wear. My closet is full of clothes now. I have tailored suits. I have silk blouses. I have shoes that cost more than my first car. I could dress like the CEO I am. I could walk in there dripping in diamonds and show them exactly how rich I had become. I reached for a red designer dress. The fabric felt like water in my hands. It screamed power. Then I stopped. No, if I walked in looking like money, they would be on guard. They would see a shark. I needed them to see a mouse. I needed them to think nothing had changed. I needed them to feel superior. Because when people feel superior, they get sloppy. They say things they shouldn't say. They reveal their true faces. I put the red dress back. I pulled out a pair of plain black trousers and a simple gray sweater. It was clean, but it was old. There was a tiny loose thread on the sleeve. I wore comfortable flats, not heels. I tied my hair back in a messy bun. I wore no makeup. I looked in the mirror. I looked tired. I looked like the Vivian they remembered. The struggling Vivian, the boring Vivian. "Perfect," I whispered to my reflection. I went down to the garage. Parked in my spot was my new car, a sleek black electric sports car. It was fast and silent and beautiful. Next to it was my old car, a 2016 sedan. The paint was fading on the hood. The bumper had a dent from when a shopping cart hit it 3 years ago. I had kept it for messy errands, hauling boxes, or days when I didn't want to be noticed. I grabbed the keys to the sedan. The engine coughed when I started it. The air conditioning rattled. The smell of old coffee and dust filled the cabin. It was the smell of my past. I drove out into the city. The drive to the Oak Haven Country Club took 40 minutes. As I drove, I could feel the old anxiety trying to come back. It's a physical thing. My stomach started to knot. My hands gripped the steering wheel too tight. My brain started playing the old tapes. "You're too sensitive, Vivian. Why can't you be more fun like Tyler? You always ruin the mood with your seriousness." I took a deep breath. I focused on the road. I am not that person anymore, I told myself. I am the CEO of a major tech company. I manage 200 employees. I make decisions that move millions of dollars. I have fired people scarier than my father. I have negotiated with people smarter than my mother. They don't know who I am, they only know a memory of me. I pulled up to the gate of the country club. The guard looked at my dented car with suspicion. He leaned out of his booth. "Delivery is at the back entrance," he said rudely. I rolled down the window. I didn't smile. "I'm here for the Miller dinner," I said plainly. "My name is Vivian Miller." He checked his clipboard. He frowned. He looked at my car again, then back at the list. "Right. Go ahead." He waved me through, looking bored. He didn't respect me. That was good. That was part of the plan. I drove up the long, winding driveway. The landscaping was perfect. The grass was cut to the exact same height. The flowers were arranged in perfect circles. It was all surface. It was all fake, just like my family. I parked the sedan right in the front row. Next to me was my father's Range Rover. It was polished and shiny. On the other side was Jason's Porsche. I knew for a fact Jason couldn't afford the payments on that Porsche. Dad was probably paying for it. My dirty, dented sedan looked like a stain between their luxury cars. I turned off the engine. I sat in the silence for a moment. This was the lion's den. I was walking back into the place where I had been hurt the most. I looked at my phone one last time. I had a text from Alina, my CFO, Chief Financial Officer. "Documents are ready. I'm on standby. Just say the word." I texted back, "Give me 30 minutes." I put the phone in my pocket. I checked my face in the rearview mirror. I made sure my expression was neutral. No anger. No excitement, just a blank page. I opened the car door. The air outside smelled of fresh-cut grass and expensive perfume. I walked up the stone steps to the heavy wooden doors of the club. My heart was beating slow and steady. Thump. Thump, thump. I wasn't walking in to beg for love. I wasn't walking in to show off. I was walking in to close a deal. I pushed the doors open. I walked into the private dining room. It was called the Gold Room. The walls were covered in dark wood, and there was a chandelier that looked like a frozen explosion of glass. In the center was a round table set for 6. This time there were no empty chairs. Everyone was there. My father sat at the head of the table. He was wearing his navy suit, the one he wore when he wanted to intimidate people. My mother was next to him, wearing a dress that glittered under the lights. My brothers, Jason and Tyler, were across from them. Uncle Jeffrey was already there, nursing a scotch. As soon as I stepped onto the carpet, the performance began. "There she is," my mother shrieked. It was a high-pitched, theatrical sound. She stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. She rushed over to me. Before I could even say hello, she wrapped her arms around me. She smelled of expensive perfume and hairspray. Her hug was tight, almost suffocating. It was a hug for an audience, not for a daughter. She held me for 3 seconds too long. "We missed you so much, Vivi," she said, pulling back to look at me. She used the nickname Vivi. She hadn't called me that since I was 6 years old. Usually it was just Vivian or Hey. "Hi, Mom," I said. My voice was calm. I didn't hug her back. I just let my arms hang by my sides. She didn't notice. Or she didn't care. She guided me to the table like I was a prize pony she was showing off. "Look who made time for us," my father boomed. He stood up and extended his hand. My father is a big man. He likes to squeeze your hand until it hurts to show he is the alpha. I took his hand. His grip was hard. I squeezed back just as hard. He looked surprised for a fraction of a second, his eyes widening, but then he covered it with a loud laugh. "Sit, sit," he said. "We ordered the champagne already. Dom Perignon. Only the best for tonight." I sat down between Jason and Uncle Jeffrey. Jason looked at me. He had bags under his eyes. His suit looked expensive, but his tie was crooked. "Hey, sis," he said. He smirked. "Nice sweater. Did you get that at Target?" "Jason," Mom scolded him, but she was smiling. "Don't tease your sister, she's being thrifty. That's how rich people stay rich, right, Vivian?" "Something like that," I said. I unfolded my napkin and placed it on my lap. The waiter arrived with the champagne. He popped the cork with a soft thump. He poured the golden liquid into the tall flutes. My father raised his glass. "To family," he said. "And to success." "To family," everyone echoed. I lifted my glass, but I didn't drink. I watched them. They drank greedily. "So," Tyler said. He was looking at his phone, scrolling through TikTok. He didn't even look up at me. "I saw the article, 92 million, that's crazy." "It's a valuation, Tyler," I said quietly. "It's not cash in the bank. It means investors think the company is worth that much." "Still," my father said, waving his hand. "It's impressive. Who would have thought, our quiet little Vivian running a tech empire?" "It's a logistics platform, Dad," I said. "Not just a tech empire. We optimize supply chains for global shipping. Right, he said, clearly not listening. Computer stuff, very smart. I always knew she had it in her. Uncle Jeffrey slurped his drink. I told you, didn't I, Bob? I said, that girl is a grinder. She's got the Miller work ethic. I almost laughed. Uncle Jeffrey hadn't worked a real day in 20 years. He lived off a trust fund my grandfather set up. The Miller work ethic he was talking about didn't exist. My father had inherited his business. Jason had been given a job he wasn't qualified for. Tyler didn't work. I was the only one who had built something from zero. But tonight, they were rewriting history. Tonight, my success was suddenly a Miller trait. We are just so proud, Mom said. She reached across the table and patted my hand. Her hand was cold. I was telling the girls at the club today, my Vivian is in Forbes. They were so jealous. That was it. That was the currency. She didn't care about my hard work. She cared that she could brag to her friends. I was an accessory to her social life, like a new handbag. So, Jason leaned in. How does it feel? To be the rich one? I don't feel any different, I lied. Come on, Jason laughed. You must have bought something cool, a boat, a house in the Hamptons. No, I said. I reinvested most of the capital back into the company. We're hiring 50 new engineers next month. The table went silent for a moment. They looked disappointed. They wanted to hear about yachts and Ferraris. They wanted to hear about spending, because that's what they understood. They didn't understand building. Well, Dad cleared his throat. That's very responsible, boring but responsible. The appetizers arrived. Shrimp cocktail, oysters, tartare, it was a feast. Eat up, Dad said. It's on me tonight. He said it loudly so the waiter would hear, it's on me, as if buying dinner was a grand gesture. As we ate, they talked about themselves. Tyler talked about his brand. He had 50,000 followers now. He complained that the algorithm was shadow banning him. You should let me promote your app, Tyler said, chewing with his mouth open. I could get you like so many downloads. We could do a collab. Family discount, obviously. My app is for commercial freight shipping, Tyler, I said. I don't think your followers are looking to move 20 tons of steel across the Pacific. Tyler rolled his eyes. You're so literal, Vive. It's about vibes. Jason talked about the stress at the office. He worked for Dad's motel company. The unions are a nightmare, Jason grumbled. They want everything, breaks, overtime. It's impossible to make a profit. I knew for a fact Jason usually left the office at 2:00 p.m. to play golf. Mom talked about the renovations on the lake house. She was upset because the Italian marble tile she ordered was the wrong shade of white. It was eggshell, Vivian, she said, looking at me with wide, tragic eyes. And I specifically asked for ivory. Can you imagine? That sounds terrible, I said, keeping my face flat. It is, she sighed. Nobody is competent anymore. Nobody takes pride in their work. I cut into my steak. It was perfectly cooked, but it tasted like cardboard. They were treating me like an old friend. They were laughing, including me in the jokes, pouring more wine into my glass. If a stranger looked at our table, they would see a happy, wealthy family enjoying a Tuesday dinner. But I saw the cracks. I saw the way Dad checked his watch every 5 minutes. I saw the way Mom's smile vanished instantly when she thought no one was looking. I saw the way Jason kept tapping his foot nervously under the table. They were anxious. They were rushing through the small talk. They were being nice, but it was an effort. It was like watching bad actors trying to remember their lines. They were buttering me up. They were softening the target. I decided to help them along. I wanted to see the pitch. I wanted to see exactly how much they thought I was worth. I put my fork down. I wiped my mouth with the napkin. So, I said, I looked directly at my father. The text said you had important news. About an expansion. The air in the room changed instantly. The laughter stopped. The chewing stopped. Dad straightened his tie. He sat up taller. He exchanged a quick look with Mom. It was a rehearsed look. It's showtime. Yes, Dad said. His voice dropped an octave. It became serious. The businessman voice. I'm glad you brought that up, Vivian. He signaled the waiter to clear the plates. We have an exciting opportunity, he began. Something that is going to change the trajectory of this family forever. I leaned back in my chair. I crossed my arms. I'm listening, I said. The waiter cleared the last plate and closed the heavy door, leaving us alone in the silence of the gold room. My father reached down beside his chair and pulled up a black leather briefcase. He set it on the table with a heavy thud. He clicked the latches open, snap, snap, and pulled out a thick, glossy folder. He slid it across the white tablecloth toward me. The cover had a picture of a shining, futuristic building. It looked like a palace made of glass and cedar. Palm trees were photoshopped around it. In gold letters at the bottom it read, "The Miller Resort and Spa, a new era." "Open it," he urged. I opened the folder. Inside were architectural renderings, pie charts, and paragraphs full of buzzwords like luxury, exclusive, and synergy. "You know, the motel chain has been the backbone of this family for 40 years, Dad said. He clasped his hands on the table. "Your grandfather built the first one. I built the next 5. But the market is changing, Vivian. People don't want motels anymore. They want experiences." He pointed a thick finger at the drawing of the glass palace. "This is the future," he said. "We are going to take the flagship property off the highway, the old Miller Inn, and bulldoze it. We are going to build a 5-star wellness retreat. Saunas, organic dining, yoga studios at $400 a night. It's going to be gorgeous," Mom added. Her eyes were shining. "We're going to have a meditation garden. I'm designing it myself." "It's a guaranteed win," Jason jumped in. "We've done the market research. The demographics are perfect." I looked at the papers. I didn't look at the pretty pictures. I looked at the numbers in the corners. "This is a massive project," I said calmly. "Construction alone, $15 million. 18, Dad corrected, "to do it right." "And you have the financing?" I asked. Dad cleared his throat again. He took a sip of water. This was the pivot point. "We have the primary investors lined up," he said smoothly. "The bank is on board for the construction loan, but you know how banks are. They are bureaucratic, they are slow. They want to see a certain amount of liquid capital up front before they release the big funds. A bridge, so to speak." He paused. He looked at me with what he thought was a warm, fatherly expression. To me, he looked like a wolf deciding which part of the sheep to bite first. "We realized," he continued, "that we shouldn't be giving all this interest to strangers. We should keep it in the family. We want to offer you the chance to be a part of this." "A part of it?" I asked. "We need a bridge loan," Jason said, cutting to the chase, "to clear the old liens and break ground." "How much?" I asked. Dad locked eyes with me. $1.5 million. $1.5 million. The room was deadly silent. They were all watching me. Mom was twisting her ring. Tyler had finally put down his phone. $1.5 million, I repeated slowly. "It's a loan," Dad said quickly. "With interest, we'll pay you back in. Let's say 2 years, 6% interest. That's better than you'll get in a savings account." "It's an investment in your legacy, Vivi," Mom said softly. "This resort. It's going to be something we leave to our grandchildren. Don't you want to be part of building that?" "And frankly," Uncle Jeffrey mumbled, "it's the right thing to do. The family supported you when you were starting out. Now that you've made it big, it's time to give back." I felt a sharp spike of anger in my chest, but I pushed it down. The family supported me. I thought about the time I asked for $5,000 and Dad told me to find a husband. I thought about the ramen noodles. I thought about the silence. "You said the bank is on board?" I asked. I kept my voice neutral. I turned a page in the folder. "Oh, absolutely," Dad said. "They love the project. They just need us to show some skin in the game, that's standard." "Which bank?" I asked. Dad blinked. "First National, we've been with them for decades." "And they are okay with the current occupancy rates?" I asked. Jason shifted in his seat. "Occupancy it's seasonal, it's a little down, but that's why we're pivoting. The motel model is dead." "Right," I said. "So, you need $1.5 million to demolish the old building and start fresh." "Exactly," Dad smiled. He thought he had me. He thought I was the naive daughter who just wanted to please Daddy. He thought the checkbook was already opening. "It's a no-brainer, Vivian. And look, we could go to outside investors. We have people begging to get in on this, but Mom and I discussed it. We said, no, let's give Vivian the first right of refusal. We wanted to honor you." "Honor me," I said flatly. "Yes," Mom said. "We are so proud of you. And this way we can all be partners, a true family business." They were leaning in now, the predators smelling blood. 1.5, I said again. "And you need it. When?" "By the end of the month," Dad said. "To keep the schedule." "That's very soon," I said. "Business moves fast, Vivian," Dad said condescendingly. "You know that, you have to be decisive." "I am decisive," I said. I closed the glossy folder. I placed my hands on top of it. "I have a few questions," I said. "Of course," Dad waved his hand magnanimously. "Ask anything." "You said the bank is First National," I said, "and you said occupancy is just a little down. And you said the business has been the backbone of the family. Yes, yes, and yes, Dad said, smiling. I reached into my bag. I didn't pull out a checkbook. I pulled out a thin, gray tablet. I turned it on. The screen glowed blue in the dim room. That's funny, I said, tapping the screen, because I did a little research before I came here. Public records are fascinating things. Dad's smile faltered, just a little. What do you mean? He asked. Well, I said, scrolling through a document. According to the county clerk, First National didn't approve a construction loan. Actually, they filed a notice of default against the miller 3 months ago. The silence that followed was not the silence of anticipation. It was the silence of a bomb that had just landed on the table but hadn't exploded yet. That's a misunderstanding, Dad stammered. His face started to turn red. Paperwork error, we're sorting it out. And, I continued, my voice steady and cold, occupancy isn't seasonal. It's been under 40% for 2 years. You aren't pivoting because you have a vision, Dad. You are pivoting because you are bleeding cash. I looked up from the tablet. I looked directly into his eyes. You don't need $1.5 million for a bridge. You need $1.5 million to stop the bank from seizing the property next month. You are insolvent, Mom gasped. Vivian, how dare you use that word? It's the truth, Mom, I said. The business isn't a gold mine, it's a sinking ship, and you invited me here tonight because you want me to pay for the lifeboats. Dad slammed his hand on the table. The silverware rattled. That is enough, he shouted. The fake warmth was gone, the mask had fallen off. Who do you think you are, coming in here, investigating your own family? We are offering you an opportunity. You are offering me a lie, I said. We raised you, he yelled. We put a roof over your head, we fed you, you owe us. I owe you nothing, I said. I stood up. My legs were shaking a little, but my voice was rock solid. You ignored me for 8 months. You missed my funding announcement. You missed my life. But the second you saw a dollar sign next to my name, you remembered I existed. You selfish little, Jason started to stand up. Sit down, Jason, I said sharply. The command in my voice was so strong that he actually sat back down, looking shocked. I'm not done, I said. I looked at all of them. The fear in their eyes was replacing the anger. They realized I knew. They realized the game was up. You wanted to talk business, I asked. Okay, let's talk business. Real business, not this fantasy resort nonsense. I tapped my earpiece. Elena, I said into the microphone. Come in. The heavy doors of the gold room opened again. My CFO, Elena, walked in. She was wearing a sharp gray suit and carrying a thick stack of legal documents. She looked like an executioner. She walked to the table and stood next to me. She didn't look at my family. She placed the documents in front of me. Everything is prepared, Vivian, she said. I looked at my father. He was pale. He was sweating. I didn't come here to give you a loan, Dad, I said. I don't lend money to failing businesses. It's a bad investment. Then why are you here? Mom cried. Her voice was trembling. Why did you come? I placed my hand on the new stack of papers. I'm here to make a purchase. The room was quiet, but it was a heavy kind of quiet. It was the sound of a held breath. My father was staring at the stack of papers under my hand. He looked like a man who had seen a ghost. In a way, he had. He was seeing the ghost of his own failures, which he had tried so hard to bury. Elena stood beside me, silent and professional. She was my witness. She was my shield. I opened the folder she had given me. It wasn't the glossy, colorful brochure my father had shown me. It didn't have pictures of palm trees or smiling yoga instructors. It was black and white. It was rows of numbers, tax liens, and court filings. It was the autopsy of the Miller family business. You said the business is the backbone of this family, I said, my voice steady. I picked up the first sheet of paper. But a backbone is supposed to hold you up. This business is dragging you down. You don't know what you're talking about, Jason snapped. He was trying to sound tough, but his voice cracked. You look at spreadsheets all day. You don't know the reality of operations. I know that you haven't paid your property taxes in 14 months, I said. I slid the tax document across the table. It stopped right in front of Jason's plate. The county has already placed a lien on the land. That's public record, Jason. Operations don't matter if you don't own the dirt you're standing on. Jason looked down at the paper. He didn't touch it. He looked like it might burn him. Cash flow is tight, Dad grunted. He waved his hand dismissively. It's a temporary dip. The economy is soft. Once we get the bridge loan, we clear the taxes first thing. It's standard practice. Is it standard practice to borrow money from a hard money lender at 18% interest? I asked. I pulled out the next document. You took out a second mortgage 3 years ago, I said. Not from First National, from a private equity group in Chicago known for predatory lending. You used the equity in the land to pay for. What was it? I pretended to scan the page, even though I had memorized every line. Ah, yes. Executive bonuses and fleet vehicle upgrades. I looked at Jason's Porsche key fob sitting on the table. I looked at the diamond bracelet on my mother's wrist. You stripped the equity out of the company to buy cars and jewelry, I said, and now that the balloon payment is due, you don't have the cash. We deserve those bonuses, Mom cried out. She looked offended. Your father works harder than anyone. He built this empire. He deserves to drive a nice car. Do you expect us to live like paupers? I expect you to pay your debts, I said. That's what you taught me, isn't it? A miller always pays his way. That's what you said when I needed braces and you told me to get a paper route to pay for half of them. I was 12. Mom flinched. She looked away. That was to teach you character, Dad said stiffly. Well, it worked, I said. I have character, and I also have solvency. You have neither. I continued the demolition. It felt surgical. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't crying. I was just reading the facts. Occupancy isn't just down, Dad. It has dropped 40% year over year. The reviews online are terrible. Bed bugs in room 204. Mold in the shower in room 112. No hot water in the entire east wing. Customers complain about everything these days, Uncle Jeffrey shouted. He slammed his scotch glass down. They are entitled. You can't please everyone. You need $3 million in repairs just to bring the building up to code, I said. The roof is leaking. The HVAC system is from 1985. The foundation in the north sector is cracking. If the city inspector came by tomorrow, they would condemn the building. They would put a padlock on the doors. I looked at my father. He was shrinking in his chair. He was usually such a big man, filling the room with his loud voice and his broad shoulders. Now he looked old. He looked tired. You lied to me, I said. You invited me here, gave me champagne, and showed me drawings of a resort that will never exist. You told me you needed $1.5 million for an opportunity. But that money wouldn't build a resort. It would just pay off the sharks in Chicago for another 6 months. It would buy you a little more time to pretend you are rich. We are rich, Tyler yelled. He stood up, knocking his chair over. We're the Millers, we own half the town. You own nothing, Tyler, I said calmly. The bank owns the house. The lender in Chicago owns the motel, and the credit card companies own everything else. I looked at the resort folder he had given me. This is a fantasy, I said. It's a sinking ship painted gold. And you wanted me to come on board and chain myself to the deck. It's not a sinking ship, Dad roared. He couldn't take it anymore. The truth was hurting him too much. It's a rough patch. Every business has them. You think you're so smart with your app and your venture capital. You got lucky. You don't know what it's like to grind for 40 years. I know exactly what it's like, I said. I know because I watched you. I watched you neglect the business while you played golf. I watched you promote Jason over competent managers just because he has your last name. I watched you ignore the market changes because you were too arrogant to learn new things. I leaned forward. The numbers don't lie, Dad. You are insolvent. You have been insolvent for 18 months. You have been robbing Peter to pay Paul, and now Paul is at the door with a sledgehammer. Dad's face was purple. He was breathing hard. So that's it, he spat. You come here, you humiliate us, you wave your papers around, you think you're better than us. I don't think I'm better, I said. I think I'm honest. And I think I'm the only one at this table who actually knows how to run a business. Then help us, Mom pleaded. Her strategy shifted instantly from anger to begging. She reached for my hand again, but I pulled it away. Vivian, please, if we don't get this money, we lose everything. The house, the club membership, the cars will be nothing. You won't be nothing, Mom, I said. You'll just be normal. Like everyone else. I can't be normal, she sobbed. I can't. What will people say? The scandal. Vivian, you can't let this happen. You have $92 million. This is pocket change to you. Just write the check, please. For your mother. I looked at her. I saw the tears running down her face. They were real tears, but they weren't for me. She wasn't crying because she had hurt me. She wasn't crying because she had missed my life. She was crying because she was afraid of losing her status. She was crying for her country club membership. The $92 million isn't cash, Mom, I said. I told you, and even if it was. Why would I invest in a bad deal? Because we are family, she screamed. The word hung in the air, family. It was the word they always used as a weapon. When they wanted something, they were family. When I needed something, I was a stranger. I looked at the stack of papers one last time, the evidence of their greed and their incompetence. That's the problem, I said softly. You think family means you are entitled to my work. You think it means you can treat me like dirt for 30 years and then cash me in like a lottery ticket. I closed the folder. I'm done with the pitch, I said. My refusal hit the room like a physical blow. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The waiter, who had been hovering near the door, wisely stepped out and closed it tight. We were sealed in. Then the explosion happened. You ungrateful little bitch. It was Jason. He lunged forward, slamming his fists onto the table. The wine glasses shook. Red wine spilled onto the white tablecloth, spreading like a bloodstain. Jason, Mom screamed, but she didn't stop him. You think you're so special, Jason yelled. His face was twisted and ugly. You think because you got on a magazine cover you can talk down to us. You're nothing. You were always a weird, quiet little freak. Dad should have kicked you out when you were 18. He did, I said calmly. I left the day after graduation because nobody asked me to stay. We fed you, Dad shouted. He was standing now, looming over the table. He pointed a shaking finger at me. We put clothes on your back. We paid for your college. I paid for my college, I corrected him. I had a scholarship, and I worked 3 jobs. You sent me a check for $500 once. It bounced. You act like you were abused, Dad yelled. We gave you a good life. We gave you a home in a nice neighborhood. And this is how you repay us. By letting us drown. I'm not letting you drown, I said. You're already underwater. I'm just refusing to jump in with you. It's $1.5 million, Vivian, Tyler shouted. He looked like a child who had been told he couldn't have a toy. That's nothing to you. You're just being mean. You're doing this to punish us. I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm making a business decision. The same way you made a business decision to skip my funding announcement. The same way you made a business decision to ignore my texts for 8 months. That's different, Mom wailed. She was dabbing her eyes with a napkin, ruining her mascara. We were busy. We have lives. You can't hold a grudge forever, Vivian. It's not Christian. It's not right. It's not a grudge, I said. It's data. I have analyzed the data of our relationship, and the return on investment is 0. Oh, listen to her, Uncle Jeffrey sneered. He was drunk now, using her big fancy words. Return on investment. You're cold, Vivian. You've always been cold, a block of ice. No wonder you don't have a husband. No man wants a woman who counts pennies like a miser. The insult was meant to sting. Years ago it would have. Years ago I would have cried. I would have apologized. I would have written the check just to make them stop yelling, just to make them love me for 5 minutes. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I sat there, perfectly still, watching them self-destruct. They were trying everything. The guilt, the shame, the anger, the pity. Dad tried to play the victim. I'm an old man, Vivian. My heart isn't good. The stress of this. It could kill me. Do you want that on your conscience? Do you want to kill your father? Your heart is fine, Dad, I said. You played 18 holes of golf yesterday. I saw the scorecard on the club app. Mom tried to play the martyr. I gave up everything for you children. I sacrificed my figure. I sacrificed my career. And now, when I need just a little help, just a tiny bit of help, my own daughter turns her back on me. You had a nanny, Mom, I said. And a housekeeper. You didn't sacrifice anything. They kept going. It was a storm of noise. They called me selfish. They called me arrogant. They called me a traitor. I let them scream. I let them get it all out. Inside, I felt a strange sensation. I expected to feel hurt. I expected to feel sad. But instead, I felt lighter. Every insult they threw at me was cutting a cord. Snip, there went the need for their approval. Snip, there went the hope that they would change. Snip, there went the guilt. I realized that they didn't see me. They had never seen me. To them, I was just a resource. When I was a child, I was an emotional resource, someone to ignore so they could feel important. Now I was a financial resource, someone to rob so they could stay comfortable. They were vampires, and I was finally closing the window. Are you done? I asked. My voice was quiet, but it cut through their shouting. They stopped. They were panting, out of breath. The room was hot with their anger. I said no, I stated. I am not loaning you the money, that is final. Then get out, Dad growled. He sat back down heavily. He couldn't look at me. Get out of my sight. You are no daughter of mine. If you walk out that door, don't ever come back. You are dead to us. I've been dead to you for a long time, Dad, I said. I just finally realized it. Go, Jason shouted. Take your cheap car and your cheap clothes and get lost. We'll find the money somewhere else. We don't need you. You won't find the money, I said. No bank will touch you. No investor will touch you. I'm the only one who even looked at the books. We will find a way, Mom insisted. We always do. We are survivors. You aren't survivors, I said. You are parasites. Mom gasped. I stood up. I smoothed out my gray sweater. I picked up my purse. I'm leaving, I said. But before I go, there is one more thing. I looked at Alina. She had been standing like a statue through the entire screaming match. She hadn't flinched once. She knew the plan. Alina, I said. Show them the last document. Alina stepped forward. She didn't look intimidated by my father's red face or Jason's clenched fists. She was a professional. She dealt with numbers, not tantrums. She placed a single, thick document on the center of the table. It made a heavy sound, thud. The cover was blue. It had a legal seal on the front. What is this? Dad asked. He didn't touch it. He looked at it like it was a bomb. I told you I wouldn't give you a loan, I said. And that's true. A loan implies trust. A loan implies I believe you can pay me back. I don't. I walked around the table slowly. However, I continued. I am a businesswoman. And when I see a distressed asset with potential, I act. Distressed asset? Jason asked. What are you talking about? I knew about your financial trouble 3 weeks ago, I said. My team monitors market opportunities. We saw the default notice from First National. We saw the filings from the Chicago lender. I stopped behind my father's chair. I didn't come here to save you, Dad. I came here to foreclose on you. Foreclose? Dad spun around in his chair. You can't foreclose. You don't own the debt. Actually, I said, I do. I nodded at the blue folder. Open it. Dad's hands were shaking so bad he could barely lift the cover. He read the first page. His eyes scanned the legal text. His face went from red to a terrifying shade of gray. This isn't possible, he whispered. What? Mom asked. Bob, what is it? She bought the note, Dad whispered. His voice was gone. He sounded like a ghost. She bought the mortgage. I bought your debt from the Chicago lender yesterday morning, I explained calmly. They were happy to get rid of it. They thought you were going to default anyway. I paid them 80 cents on the dollar. It was a bargain, really. And First National? Dad asked, looking up at me with horror. I acquired that debt this afternoon, I said. Alina finalized the wire transfer while we were eating appetizers. I looked around the table. I own the mortgage on this country club membership. I own the mortgage on the Miller Inn. I own the lien on the lake house. I own the debt on the company vehicles. The silence in the room was absolute. It was a vacuum. Jason dropped his fork. It clattered loudly against his plate. You own everything? Tyler asked. His voice was small. Everything, I said. I am your creditor. I am the bank. I leaned in close to my father. So when you tell me to get out and never come back, you might want to be careful, because technically you are sitting in a chair that I paid for. Dad slumped back. He looked defeated. All the bluster, all the anger, all the I am the patriarch energy drained out of him. He was just an old man who owed a lot of money to a woman he had underestimated. Why? Mom whispered. She looked terrified. Why would you do this, to ruin us? No, Mom, I said, to save the business, but not for you, for me. I signaled Alina again. She pulled more papers from her briefcase. These are the terms, I said. Since you are in default on both loans, I have the right to seize the assets immediately. I could kick you out of the house tonight. I could lock the doors of the motel tomorrow morning. Mom let out a whimper. But, I said, I'm not cruel. I'm not you. I slid a check across the table. It was face down. I am taking over full ownership of Miller Hospitality Group, effective immediately, I said. The board is dissolved. The executive positions are terminated. I looked at Jason. You're fired. I looked at Dad. You're retired. You can't just... Jason started, but he stopped. He knew I could. The check on the table, I said, is a severance package. It's $200,000. That is for your equity. It is more than the business is worth, considering the debt. Take it and you walk away clean. No debt, no lawsuits, no bankruptcy. 200,000, Dad said weakly. But the land alone. The land is leveraged to the hilt, Dad, I said. You own nothing. This is a gift. It's the last gift I will ever give you. And if we refuse? Uncle Jeffrey asked. Then I foreclose tomorrow, I said simply. I take the assets through the courts. You get nothing. You go bankrupt. You lose the house. You lose the cars. You lose the reputation you care so much about. Everyone at the club will know Robert Miller couldn't pay his bills. I let the threat hang there. I knew that was the one thing they couldn't handle. They could handle losing money. They couldn't handle losing face. You have 5 minutes to sign, I said. I checked my watch. A cheap, simple watch on my wrist. The clock starts now. I walked over to the window and looked out at the golf course. It was dark outside. I could see my reflection in the glass. I looked calm. I looked strong. Behind me, I heard the sounds of my family falling apart. I heard Mom crying softly. I heard Jason cursing under his breath. I heard the scratch of a pen on paper. They were signing their empire over to the daughter they forgot. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to see it. I already knew how this story ended. I waited for the sound of the pen to stop. I turned back from the window. My father was holding the pen. His hand was shaking so hard that the tip of the pen was tapping against the paper like a nervous heartbeat. Tap, tap, tap. He looked up at me one last time. There was no anger left in his eyes. There was only desperation. He looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, realizing that the ground had already crumbled beneath his feet. Vivian, he croaked, please, the legacy, the Miller name. The name is safe, Dad, I said coldly. I'm keeping the name, I'm just changing the management. He looked at my mother. She was staring at the tablecloth, weeping silently. She gave him a tiny, almost invisible nod. She knew the game was over. If they didn't sign, they would face the humiliation of a public foreclosure. They would be dragged through the courts. Their friends at the club would read about their bankruptcy in the Sunday paper. For people like my parents, poverty is scary, but embarrassment is fatal. Dad looked back at the paper. He pressed the pen down. He signed his name, Robert Miller. It was a messy scrawl. It looked like a surrender. He pushed the paper away from him as if it were contaminated. He dropped the pen. It's done, he whispered. Alina stepped forward immediately. She checked the signature. She stamped the document. She placed a copy of the countersigned agreement on the table. Thank you, Alina said. Her voice was devoid of emotion. The transfer of ownership is legally binding as of this moment. I walked back to the table. I picked up the check, the $200,000 severance. I held it out to my father. Here, I said. He didn't take it. He just stared at his hands. Jason snatched it. He looked at the number. Greed warred with panic in his eyes. 200 grand, Jason muttered. That's 50 each. That's nothing. That won't even buy a condo. It's 200,000 more than you had 5 minutes ago, I said. And Jason, he looked up at me. You need to return the Porsche keys, I said. Tonight. What? Jason stood up, his face turning pale. No way, I need my car. How am I supposed to get home? Take an Uber, I said. The Porsche is a company vehicle. The company belongs to me, and I don't let former employees drive company assets. You can't do this, Tyler whined. What about my allowance? What about the trust fund? The trust fund was invested in the motel chain, Tyler, I said. Dad drained it 5 years ago to pay for the roof repairs. Didn't he tell you? Tyler looked at Dad with horror. You spent my money, Dad didn't answer. He was slumped in his chair, staring at nothing. The great Robert Miller, the man who had terrified me for 20 years, was just an empty suit. And the house? Mom asked. Her voice was trembling. Vivian, surely you won't take the house. Where will we live? I looked at my mother. I remembered the way she looked at me when I was a child, like I was a stain on her perfect carpet. I remembered how she ignored my calls. I remembered how she cared more about her tile color than my feelings. The house is collateral on the First National loan, I said. It belongs to the bank, and now I am the bank. I paused. I let the reality sink in. I am giving you 30 days, I said. That is generous. Most banks would give you 10. You have 30 days to vacate the property. I suggest you use the severance money to find a rental. Maybe something cozy. A rental, Mom gasped. She clutched her pearls. I can't live in a rental. What will the girls say? Tell them you're downsizing, I suggested. Or tell them the truth, that you spent decades pretending to be rich while neglecting the actual business. Uncle Jeffrey, who had been silent since the threat of bankruptcy, suddenly stood up. He swayed a little. You're a monster, he spat at me. A cold-hearted monster. Family is supposed to stick together. Loyalty, what happened to loyalty? Loyalty is a two-way street, Uncle Jeffrey, I said. You were loyal to the money. Not to me. I looked at them all one last time. Dad, defeated and broken. Mom, terrified of her social standing collapsing. Jason and Tyler, realizing they would actually have to work for a living. Uncle Jeffrey, a drunk old man with nothing left to leech off. I waited for the sadness to hit me. I waited to feel bad for them. But the sadness didn't come. Instead, I felt a massive weight lift off my chest. It was a physical sensation. My shoulders dropped. My lungs expanded. I realized that for my entire life, I had been carrying their expectations. I had been carrying their judgments. I had been trying to fill a bucket that had a hole in the bottom. Now, I put the bucket down. "Alina," I said, "handle the keys." "Yes, ma'am," Alina said. She held out her hand to Jason. Jason looked at me, then at Alina. He cursed under his breath. He dug into his pocket and slammed the Porsche keys into Alina's hand. "I hope you choke on it," Jason said to me. "I won't," I said. "I have a very good digestion." I turned my back on them. I walked toward the heavy wooden doors. "Vivian," Dad called out. His voice was weak, cracking. "Vivian, wait," I stopped. My hand was on the brass handle. "What?" I asked without turning around. We did love you," he said. "In our own way." I stood there for a second. I thought about the empty chairs at my celebration dinner. I thought about the text message asking for money. I thought about the silence. "No, Dad," I said softly to the door. "You loved having a daughter you could ignore until she became useful. That isn't love. That's ownership." I pushed the door open. "And I'm not for sale anymore." I walked out of the gold room. The door clicked shut behind me with a solid, final sound. It sounded like the closing of a vault. I walked through the lobby of the country club. It was quiet. The dinner rush was over. A few people were sitting in the lounge, drinking brandy and talking about golf scores. They looked up as I walked past. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know that the woman in the gray sweater and old shoes had just bought their club's biggest debt. They saw a nobody. I smiled. I liked being a nobody to them. It meant I was free. I walked out the front doors into the night air. It was cool and crisp. The sky was clear. I could see the stars. Inside that room, the air had been hot and suffocating, filled with lies and perfume. Out here, the air was clean. I took a deep breath. It tasted like freedom. I walked down the stone steps to the parking lot. The valet saw me coming. He looked at my ticket. He frowned. He remembered my car. "The sedan?" he asked, wrinkling his nose. "Yes," I said. "The sedan." He jogged off to get it. While I waited, I pulled my phone out of my pocket. There was a text message. It had come through 2 minutes ago. It was from Mom. "Vivi, please, let's talk about this. Don't do this to us. I can fix this. I'll make Dad apologize. Just come back inside. We can work something out. You're my baby girl." I stared at the words, baby girl. She only used that word when she wanted to manipulate me. She was still trying. Even now, after everything, she thought she could pull the string and I would dance. She thought I was still that desperate little girl waiting for approval. I didn't feel angry. I just felt done. I tapped the 3 dots in the corner of the screen. I selected block caller. Then I went to Dad's contact. Block. Jason, block. Tyler, block. Uncle Jeffrey, block. I watched the names disappear from my active list. It was digital surgery. I was cutting out the infection. The valet pulled up in my 2016 sedan. The engine rattled. The brakes squeaked as he stopped. It looked ridiculous parked next to the Mercedes and BMWs. The valet got out and held the door open. He looked like he expected a tip, but he also looked like he judged me for driving junk. I reached into my purse. I pulled out a $100 bill. I handed it to him. "Keep the change," I said. His eyes went wide. "Thank you, ma'am." I got into the car. The seat was worn. The steering wheel was peeling a little. It was imperfect. It was old, but it was mine. I bought it with my own money. I paid for the gas. I paid for the insurance. I didn't owe anyone a cent for this car. I started the engine. It roared to life. I drove down the long winding driveway, past the perfect flower beds, past the security gate. I turned onto the main road. I rolled down the windows. I let the wind whip my hair around my face. I thought about what I was leaving behind. I was leaving behind a family legacy that was built on lies. I was leaving behind the need to be good enough for people who were never good enough for me. I was leaving behind the shame of being the black sheep. I thought about what was ahead of me. My company. My employees who respected me. My own home. My future. I realized that revenge isn't about hurting the people who hurt you. It isn't about screaming or fighting or making them suffer. Real revenge is just being happy without them. Real revenge is realizing you don't need them. Real revenge is becoming so whole, so complete, that they simply cease to matter. They were footnotes now. Just small, sad scribbles at the bottom of the page of my life. I turned up the radio. A song I liked was playing. I started to hum along. I looked in the rearview mirror one last time. The lights of the country club were fading into the distance. They were just tiny specks of light in the dark. Then I turned my eyes back to the road ahead. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the path. I wasn't the victim anymore. I wasn't the invisible daughter. I wasn't the bank. I was Vivian. And for the first time in my life, I was driving my own car, on my own road, going exactly where I wanted to go. Have you ever had to outgrow someone to save yourself?